evening, and welcome to the April 11th Grants Advisory Commission meeting. Would everybody join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this part of the meeting, I'd like to entertain any public comments not in reference to anything on tonight's agenda. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's find out who's here.
Excited to get going.
Gibson.
Here.
Commissioner Acosta is not here. Commissioner Carroll.
Here.
Commissioner Haywood.
Here.
Commissioner Kriz.
Here.
Commissioner Perez.
Here.
Commissioner Reed.
Here.
And Youth Commissioner Hariharan. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. And we don't need to say the Pledge of Allegiance again. We'll go to public comment. Just a reminder, though, it is for anything that's not on tonight's agenda. Just step up to the podium if you have something in reference to something not on the agenda. Not seeing anyone approach, we'll close public comment. Now we'd like to vote on the minutes from last time. Did everybody have a chance to review, and are there any corrections?
Commissioner Perez, I have a correction on section 5.1 of the minutes. It has me as an aye and absent, so I was absent, not aye.
Sorry,
That's
thank you.
Any others? If there aren't any other corrections, do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve as amended by Commissioner Perez.
A second?
Commissioner Haywood seconds.
So we have a motion to approve the minutes by Commissioner Carroll and a second by Commissioner Haywood. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? And the minutes are good. Moving on to tonight's business, turn it over to staff.
Yes, if we could have the PowerPoint. And I'll just say good evening. The commission is going to move on to the next item and review the grant applications. As you all know, this was our third year using our new priority groups. We did receive a total of 40 applications that were split between the groups as shown on this slide. Staff reviewed all applications and one was deemed incomplete, so 39 applications were scored and ranked by the commissioners. This year, the commission has a total of $604,776 to award to applicants, and the funds are broken down with $244,640 from the Citizens Benefit Fund, $350,000 from ARPA, and $10,126 from the REACH Fund. Before I hand the presentation over to Chair Gibson and the commission, I wanted to remind the commission that if you have any applications that you recuse yourself from, that just to let us know prior to the discussion. And now we can begin discussion and deliberation. Thank you.
So one more thing on the recusal. If you have a recusal, you can't be part of the discussion or the vote. And this is our lovely room to the left here that we can excuse ourselves. Commissioner Perez, I, and staff had a meeting beforehand a few days ago and decided we're going to divide up the discussion a little bit between myself and Commissioner Perez based on kind of how we had our recusals. So I'm going to lead the discussion on strategic one-time grants and the small grant requests, and Commissioner Perez is going to lead the discussion on Operation Mission Support.
Okay.
Is everybody, commissioners, good with that?
Yep.
And Annie, I'd like to make sure you know, even though you didn't get a vote per se, we really value your opinion. So please speak up in the discussion if you have comments on things that you felt strongly about. It'd be great to know that.
Yeah, I actually have a question for staff on that. Did we get the youth commissioner ratings? I know they weren't factored into ours, but do we normally have access to see youth commissioner rankings
No,
and
because
recommendations?
nobody else gets anybody else's score, so that's why it's really important for our youth commissioner to come and be part of the discussion.
Oh, no, absolutely. But, and I'm not asking for her scores, but normally we get some sense. I think last year with Ryan, we got
We only received that because he wasn't here. He wanted to make sure his information was part of the discussion, and that's the only reason we got that extra piece of information last year, because he was on spring break.
And if I remember right, we were handed that when we sat down.
That is correct.
So we didn't have it in our deliberation.
That is correct.
Beforehand, so. But on that note, please feel free to
Yeah.
speak up.
Other questions? So is it all right with everyone if we just start with the first priority group of strategic one-time grants, or does the commission want to start in a particular area? Any feeling about that?
Yeah, I guess we could, unless there's just any general observations about the process. This was, as always, it's a challenging, there's a lot of good work going on in the community, and it's a very challenging to make recommendations. But I think that all of ours, as they were put together, I think give a good representation in regards to where we think, consistent with the policies that we put together. I think confident that we're going to be able to come up with something good. But yeah, it's always a challenge, because a lot of good work, and there's only so much money to go around, even though it was a fairly substantial amount this year.
It was also nice to see a few new organizations
Yes.
come
Yeah.
in with applications. That was nice, too. Just when you think you've seen everybody, and then here comes somebody new with another great idea, or a great service that they offer. Anyone else? So we're going to start with strategic one-time grants. Let's talk about recusals. I think in the past, what we have done is we have an open discussion about the non-recusals, and then those of us can leave the room and you can have a discussion about the recused applications. And then, of course, we'll do a separate vote on each. So for strategic one-time grants, Commissioner Perez is a recusal on Keaton's Child Cancer Alliance, and I am one on Shelter Providers of Sacramento. So those are the last two on your sheet there. So if you'd like to open up for discussion on the first.
You're looking at the wrong
Am I looking at the wrong one? I'm sorry. Looking at my notes. Number 4 and number 6. This is the corrected one, too. Yeah, the Salvation Army's on there. All right. So I'd like to open up discussion on the other 5 applicants. There was no, just a general comment I have, there's no full funding in this category with the averages.
I think that's the case in all of them.
Yeah, I do too.
There was,
Go ahead.
no, and that is one of the things that basically the way we've averaged the recommendations, this is going to get a little, well, it's averages of all of them based on the individual recommendations coming from the commissioners. Now, I guess the thing is in last year, we actually did look at one of the recommendations that we had made from the city council, was look to try to do the full funding when we could. So maybe this is where we look for that break point and maybe try to give full funding for the higher ones, find a transition point to do maybe some of the recommended funding, and then make a break point on all 3 of the different categories potentially. So that's one suggestion. So not just the average recommended amounts.
Yeah, I was going to say, in the past, that's kind of been part of our process, and I don't know if it would be appropriate to say, I like the idea of breaking them out, but there's a part of me that feels like, well, what it tells me with all the averages is we didn't have a unanimous agreement
Right.
on the very top ones, which is okay. I mean, we're all different
Right,
people
right.
and have different perspectives. But part of me likes the idea of talking about which groups at the top do we want to fully fund, and then, where the line breaks, and then maybe not completely deciding that category. We could kind of move on to some of the other categories, get consensus on those things as well. And then we kind of have a floating pot, if you will, that could go to any of these. And, there's other considerations, I think, when we get down to that level.
Well, I know I do have, my only comment about some of that would be I do have comments that I made on my own scoring. on some of these that would make me not want to fully fund them, even though they might be at the top, but I know I'm only one. But I'd love to be able to share the comments, and I would
Yeah.
like others that have made comments of why maybe, to your point, because it might not align with where we were at, but I think we all probably made comments. Tricia, were you going to say something? No. Okay. I'll start off by as an example on the Placer Food Bank. Love their program, but I noticed that, and I might have read this wrong, but again, I believe I read it correctly. Only 2 of the partners agencies are in Roseville. And they, even in their application, said they serve 44% of their funding serves Roseville residents. So that would have been my theory or logic in not giving them full funding.
And I think the other thing to consider, Chair Gibson, is often the budget data reflects the fact that the project budget and their ask usually is a percentage that matches that percentage of the people that they're serving. So that's that's just another piece of the puzzle as well. I'm a proponent of full funding and then just going from there. So that's where I stand on that. Not to say that we can't consider smaller amounts and spreading the pie, so to speak. But I agree with the council's recommendation to just go for full funding as much as possible. More is better, and especially with some of the programs that we have.
But especially with the food bank, in regards to, I think that some of a lot of the requests that have come before the commission, these are all still ripples of the COVID impact, right? So whether it's feeding disadvantaged within the community, the mental health stuff, there's just, we're still seeing a lot of COVID ripples and everybody is doing some really good work in all of these areas. So to parse it out, I'm not sure. They did do some percentages.
To remind my fellow commissioners, though, we also painstakingly modified the questions
Right.
to get a clear, how does this impact the city of
Of
Roseville?
Roseville. Mhm.
And I don't believe their application, again, I love their organization, but it didn't state how any additional funding would increase. They would plan to increase, but the fact still remains they only have 2 partners in their agencies that are in Roseville, the rest are not. And they had like 8 or 10. So I just wanted, again, I'm one of many, but we did talk a lot about really getting information to show how this will impact the citizens of Roseville.
And I agree with you, Gibbs. I saw her too. I agree, and I think we have to apply that factor across all the applications, because there are a number of applications where either they didn't specify the number of particular residents in Roseville. I threw a random number in there, but then there was nothing later on in the application, and we'll talk about that one specifically. But also another point I want to raise before I turn it over is, many of these organizations only serve a very small percentage of people. And that's where I struggled this year, because if we are trying to think about the benefit to Roseville, if you have a program where you may have 100 people in that program, how does that benefit Roseville? And the way I approached it this year was looking at it from an even bigger bird's eye, and looking at it from the fact that by giving these organizations the funding, they're not going to be turning around and looking for resources in other places. So, so the burden is being taken off of, let's say, the county to give them services versus this organization. Obviously, many of them partner together, but for illustrative purposes, that basically these nonprofits are taking a burden off somebody else. So that's how it benefits us as citizens of Roseville, is that we're seeing the results, because these are productive citizens who are then going to turn around and put back into the community, whether it's food, whether it's counseling, whether it's arts, or education. Mm-hmm. So. Mm-hmm. I've said my piece. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, really quick. I just wanted to bring up that, like when I was ranking stuff, I didn't try to like focus on which would make like a better impact because all these are like such great like products and programs. Like it would have been impossible for me to sit down and be like, oh, which one would be better than the other. I was kind of focusing on like the impact on Roseville itself and like whether it was in Roseville or not and how well the application was like submitted. So I guess like working like beyond the rankings that we've like submitted like anonymously, just focusing on Roseville itself, the city and like the impact on the city itself would be like the best way to go.
I was going to add to, yeah, I definitely see both points. So I saw like the Placer Food Bank, it's 2 within the 11 that they were going to serve. And it was about, I have a little picture I drew, $21,296 were solely for Roseville distribution to install the new lift gate. And when you look at the numbers, the top 3 in that category, number 1, that's 84% that our average was of what they proposed. Number 2 was 75% average that we came with. And number 3 was 74%. So I would say 2 and 3, we view them very similarly. And Youth for Christ Sacramento also serves other areas. So those are similar. And then you get to number 4, and that's about 61%. Then it drops to 63, then 56. And number 7 was 9%. So I'm looking at the top 3 and thinking that they are ranking similar, and on average, we have similar.
So, and the percentage you're talking about are the percentage of the recommended, average of the recommendations from the commissioners compared to what their request was?
Yes, and you could all help me with my math. So I took like,
No, that's right.
yeah.
Calculator.
I did bring the calculator.
I could share if you want. No.
I feel like I want to just bring up one thing, and this isn't, I totally support the idea of the food bank, but one of the things I do feel, because we're doing these categories, this is the 3rd year in a row that the food bank has come in on the one-time strategic grant. And I think the idea of that category was literally something new, different. We're going to invest in the community. It's a one-time kind of thing to kickstart the funds, and then either we don't need that in the future or we'll have other ways to maintain that. And with all due respect, I feel like 3rd year in a row, we're really funding operational missional support for them. And by having them in this category, they're not, if you will, competing with the other operational missional support. So I'm not necessarily saying don't fund them, but there's a part of me that just feels 3 times in a row. I mean, every one of these groups in Operation Missional Support could say, we're doing something new this year, we're buying a new piece of equipment, we're, and they could be in a smaller pool and potentially get more funding that way. So there is a part of me that just feels, in fact, I think we said when we did the categories that operational mission support and the small requests, that there's not necessarily an expectation, but the idea is, you can repeat each year in these categories. Where this one, we didn't say you couldn't, but the intent, again, was this is kind of a spark injection into the community for something new, special, that, like I said, either you'll have to, this first year funding will have resources to continue it, or it's a one-time thing literally, and you really don't need additional funding year after year from the commission. So I just feel like at some level that should be taken into account.
That goes, I think that's where my logic was with Commissioner Perez, is they specifically identified a piece of equipment that would service the city of Roseville, that
Right,
lift
it would-
gate.
I mean, trucks, lift gates, those sort of things
That's
to be
a
able
one-
to.
Yeah.
But each year they've done that. And I think
Because
every
they
year
are
can
special
continue.
and then they likely could, but we didn't really identify that criteria. We may have assumed it, but we didn't actually identify that criteria as one of the things that would be specific about this category.
Yeah, and then when.
Maybe that's something we could work on for the future, but I think now we don't have that information.
Yeah, well, we did talk about it in our subcommittee, and we brought it up in the fall when we were looking at potentially changing the categories a little bit or refining. And when we got to the questions, we added some things in there to kind of refine the questions as well to get at that. So, like I said, I'm not saying we shouldn't fund them, but I think there is some level of consideration where I hear in my head gaming the system, and I just don't think that's fair to the other organizations. Like I said, every one of these other groups in Operation Mission Support could probably come up with a one-time purchase that would support their ongoing things to put them in the other category, and it just feels like, so anyway, I appreciate you guys listening, and as I said, I'm not suggesting we don't fund, but it is a consideration as I look at how we distribute the funds.
Is there a proposed break on the 100% side? Based on the math, or?
There's a lot of range. I kind of like the way that you're looking at it, more of a percentage served to Roseville versus the percentage, wasn't that? You're looking at it more of,
So the percentages I presented were just the average amount, what percentage of that was
the total fund or
Yes.
in Roseville?
of the requested amount.
Okay.
In Roseville, I could add comments because I try to make notes of that.
This is a lot more all over the place than it has been in years past.
Yeah. So for example, like Youth for Christ, it serves 620 youth in each center, 4 counties, and 1 is in Placer. And then Placer Food Bank, we talked about, it has 2 in Roseville for the refrigerated truck. But the lift gate is all 100% Roseville distribution.
And for the Youth for Christ one, even though they serve other places, that it was like the fire pit and all that, that was specific for their location in Roseville. So that one I don't see as being it's, I suppose other community kids could come, but their focus is Roseville, the location, where it's getting the enhancement there is specific to Roseville.
Yeah, the 50 youth.
The other thing that I would say I like, the Placer Food Bank, the truck, the lift gate, you said is specific to the truck that serves Roseville, correct?
Yes, it said it would be liftgate for Roseville distribution.
Picked up on too.
And that's something that, more subjectively, with the Placer Food Bank, I did notice in a lot of the other grant applications that what goes to the Placer Food Bank trickles down to a lot of other nonprofits that serve our community as
Right.
well
Uh-huh.
through collaboration, which is also something that we look at. So something to consider.
Again, that's what Commissioner Perez said is just another factor of the impact beyond just the immediate grant application itself, the impact on the greater community and how those people then in turn become better community members, so to speak, and more productive, which is again win-win in my book.
So based on this, maybe a straw position would be the first 2 would be full funded, and then start transitioning in this category to the recommended amounts at some point. I think we should probably find what that break point is in each of the different categories, and then start filling in with the remaining funds. So that would be an approach.
Yeah.
So what that does is that cuts back
Tricia needs
Placer Food Bank a
Math.
little bit and gets that passed along to some of the other.
So out of, except for applications 4 and 6, does anyone have any comments about, gosh, number 5 should be number 1? Does anybody have any specific comments about the rankings that you just don't feel like they belong where they are, or is everybody in pretty good
I
agreement?
do, but we can't talk about it yet.
For one of the recusals? Me too, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, fine, we're leaving. I just wanted to make sure that if there's any discussion, about, geez, what the heck are they number 7 for, that we had a conversation about that.
I think before we move to fully fund some of the other ones, we should let the conversation happen on the one that you and I are recused on.
4 and
And then
6.
come back and, so,
Does that sound good?
yeah, okay. Who's first out, me or you?
I'll go first.
You go? Okay.
Wait, yes, I will. Taking my eyes back.
Take your time. Okay, Commissioner Gibson, or Chair Gibson is now out of the room. So I would like to open up discussion on shelter providers, Homemade Sacramento.
You want to go?
Yeah, I think this is the one I emailed you on, Tricia, that they didn't really do the bids, and this is capital equipment.
agree with you.
And I think I emailed, and I don't know that I got an answer, maybe this is something for future review when we go through this process next year. You guys don't, I know you kind of review to make sure they have the required documents. I still had the question about the counseling one. But you're not looking to verify that they submitted the bids, or that when they said this isn't capital equipment, that was legitimately a correct answer. Okay, that might be something for future that initial screening takes into account, so we don't get in this position. What would you like to say?
I agree. I don't think this application should have qualified, primarily because there were no bids. My other issue with this application is it's a little haphazard. They do state tangentially, I think it was at the beginning, that it was they wanted to buy equipment, yet there's nothing in the remainder of the document. There's nothing in the project budget. There's nothing, there are no bids, but there's nothing in the project budget. There's nothing in any of the subsequent narratives that speak to specifically what they are going to use this money for. I couldn't in good conscience recommend funding an application where I didn't even know where the money was going to go for. I didn't know if they were going to be laying down new floors, buying new tables, buying $5,000 stainless steel refrigerators, industrial ovens. That was the impression I got because of the project itself. But yeah, it was very. I was quite disappointed because that is something I'm passionate about, and I know it's so very much needed. Which made it heartbreaking. So.
Yeah, I took it to mean commercial kitchen equipment. I think they even said that. So even though they didn't spell out refrigerator, stove, whatever. And to me, this is a great example of and just so people know what we're talking about, because you guys probably didn't get a chance to read the applications. This group was going to fund what I understood to be commercial kitchen equipment in the Gathering Inn. Mm-hmm. So that's a Roseville facility that works with the homeless. To me, this is a perfect kind of one-time strategic, help a fellow organization. And, once you have that funding, hopefully you don't need equivalent funding every year to maintain your commercial appliances, although they can get, costly. But so I loved the idea of it. But unfortunately, it just felt, and I don't know what the rest of you guys thought when you read the application, but it just felt like technicality issue that it got this far in the process and then was competitive when, again, for the other organizations, they could have, just said this is what we want to do and submit without the bids. And anyway.
I'll say I think bids are important. I also think the issue is important, so I'm kind of split on it.
I mean, I echo what you're all saying. My takeaway, as specific I could get, was it was for kitchen appliances, commercial grade prep and serving tables, and electrical services. But yeah, there was aspects that were very vague or not as clear. And I don't remember the score I gave them. I can look it up, but I know that I was trying to see the impact and the need. And I know we fund the services regularly that support, our homeless community. And they spoke about it and saying, like, the Gathering Inn can serve up to 100 meals daily for the unhoused residents. So I agree with what you're saying.
This is maybe a question for Jonathan. I mean, do we have, if we explicitly say to do capital equipment, you have to do this, do we have the latitude to say we're going to waive that for this application?
I think it's up to you how you interpret what our policy manual currently says for this funding cycle. If you feel like they didn't meet a requirement that was clear, then you can reflect that and ultimately how you vote as a collective.
Okay, I'm a little surprised to hear you say that, given other areas that are more gray in our policy manual, you come down a little stronger. So, and then there's the setting the precedent.
I can tell you, my read of it is the intent was probably you need 3 bids or an explanation why. And there's an example given that talks about if there's a specialized thing for manufacture and there's only 2 suppliers that could potentially do that, then there's an explanation that you couldn't find 3 that could give you a bid. So I would take a more literal view, but it's ultimately up to you as the commission.
I was looking at the rankings that I put in there, and based on the impact they were having in the community, I had them up in my ranking, but again, I didn't likely take that view on the actual hard bids, that whether they were hard bids or not, I felt that it identified it clear enough in regards to what they were looking for me to rank it at that level.
What did the application question say with respect to providing bids that might provide some guidance?
Said it didn't, what did their application?
Our application question say in
Yeah,
terms of the requirement?
if you were doing capital improvements, then you have to provide 3 bids. And then there's another part of the question too, and they said it doesn't apply, where I think that's a,
I think they answered no to the capital gain, to
Right,
the
it's not a
capital
capital-
equipment, the
yeah.
capital, yeah,
And
they
it-
answered no to all those questions, which is why,
yeah, and it specifically says a capital expenditure is what, 250, I mean, it's very low, $250 or more. I mean,
per item. So ultimately, that would logically mean you should be submitting bids.
for each item, I mean, and as Commissioner Haywood said, even though I think we all have a general idea of what they were going to purchase, you know, for one, any commercial appliance, I would imagine, is going to be more than $250. And we don't know, we know in general what they wanted, but we don't know, you know, it's a refrigerator, here are the 3 bits, here's the oven, here's the new counter, stainless steel countertop, table, whatever it is. It's just very, this is the kind of stuff we're going to buy. But this doesn't count as capital equipment, which I think is incorrect.
And especially since we've had other applications in the past for similar types of equipment. And we funded it because, and they've put in the bids. So I think, in my personal opinion, to allow this application to proceed would be setting a dangerous precedent for these, and as another, building on Commissioner Ellison's comment earlier about the double bidding and the way gaming the system, I sort of feel that if this application is allowed to proceed, that could potentially be an issue down the road. And I did see this happen last year. Unfortunately, I wasn't here. The same kind of thing where again, the same, maybe that equipment should have had a bid, kind of a situation, so.
I think it'll officially be reflected in our vote that we, right? We don't all have to come to a general consensus on this one issue. It'll boil down to the vote on it, right?
So right now, the discussion is, should they be allowed to be in this list or not? Did they meet the conditions of the application? Did they meet the?
In any list.
Right.
Are they
So
eligible?
Are they eligible for grant funding at this point?
Both trying to be consistent, looking at past practice to the extent that we remember and understand it, and the language that's in the policy manual.
Unfortunately, I think
don't have all that in
consistency
front of me to be
is
able to-
important in this situation. I see the need, but I do think that it's important to stick to what we say the application is.
Okay. So that would be strike this from the table.
We would need to make a motion. and
So
vote.
then I'll entertain.
Before we
No?
make any motions, we need to open up public comment. So I don't know if you're prepared now, or in terms of thinking about the rest of the discussion that you have this evening. If you want to hold off and hold this application to the end, it's up to you, however you want to proceed.
It's good advice. There's
Other potential
We're still on
issues there.
page 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the only benefit to trying to deal with it now is it is a recusal item. So if we bring it up again, then she'll have to go back again, and which is fine. I mean, it's not like we can't do that.
Totally up to you.
So, yeah, part of me feels like, in fairness, we should, at a minimum, set it aside, see how we do with the other stuff, see what other challenges may come up, and that may or may not help us in deciding at the end, here's all these kind of situations, how do we want to handle them? Or maybe we won't, maybe it'll be the only one. But
So I think what I'm hearing is it's pretty unanimous that we're going to talk more about this grant from shelter providers. but we're probably not going to be leaning towards funding it the same as we are considering the top three. Is that pretty general consensus? Up for more consideration at a later point in the conversation? Yeah? Okay, so do I need what?
I guess I'm not sure. Can you,
I'm just trying to see if we're ready to let Michelle out of the box or not.
well, yeah, right. So basically, we're deferring whether to take it out completely or not. We'll defer that till later. I mean, we're not ready to take a vote on, or make a motion and consider
If we make
just
a
not having
motion,
them
then
be
we have to
considered for
open it up
anything.
to public comment for this motion
Yeah.
or everything?
Before we take any official action, we need to open it up to public comment. So you could do that now,
I don't
or you could reserve it
see
for
that
later.
would hurt. I mean, if anybody wants, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
So we have a
So
motion?
that way we can nip it.
We want public comment before we make a
Yes.
motion.
Yes.
So I'd like to open it up for public comment. If anyone has anything they'd like to add just for consideration on this particular item.
And specifically, that's the shelter providers of Sacramento doing business as Homemade Sacramento for the Roseville Home Start.
Right. And I think specifically, and again, they didn't have the benefit of reading the applications. It's funding $30,000 was the request for commercial kitchen equipment for the Gathering Inn. But the capital expenses that they indicated they would use the money for were not, they did not consider them capital expenses and did not include bids for them.
Okay?
like-
Going, gone. I don't see any public comment. Okay. We can close public comment.
Yep.
And then I will entertain a motion to
You're good. You're doing it.
entertain a motion to what? What is my motion? Sorry.
It's not your
The motion.
motion, it's.
It's,
On how to handle this application.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion on who wants to suggest how to handle this.
I mean, I know we can make a motion without, and then have the discussion. I was going to say, I don't know if we have consensus, is I guess my question, but we'll figure it out if we make a motion, I suppose. So I will go on record. I move that in light of not meeting the application requirements, that we determined that this grant application is not eligible for funding in this cycle. And we can still discuss it, but
I'll second.
Any discussion?
please. I mean,
Was that one of those? I don't know if we like specifically mentioned that when we were like ranking it, but I think there were like a couple questions about it though. But, like a question like a mentioning like whether bids are like did they lose points for it if they didn't like put the bids in or not?
well, we have, and I think you attached the scoring criteria. We speak to the budget, but I don't think we speak specifically to bids simply because not all applications have bids. But you've got multiple,
But like I do recall seeing it like at the bottom where it was like, oh, are you like requesting bids and like attaching the documents, and they did not do that.
right,
to it,
right, exactly. They had to attach the documents, they had to indicate that they were getting capital expended, they were making capital expenditures. We have like number 8, additional funding support for this project is clearly identified, which I think it was just our funding. Budget is well-defined, narrative explains how the funding will meet the project objectives and goals, and budget is reasonable in relation to the organization. So there's not a specific, did they meet the requirements question on capital expenditures? And that's why I was asking earlier if that was one of the considerations staff did when they do their eligibility check. And like I said, I think in the future, that might be something we want to consider. If we're going to make a requirement and we're not going to enforce it, it just feels awkward to say the least. So maybe before we ever get to the point of reviewing these kinds of applications, there's some kind of a check. And I know this is way off the topic of the motion, but I was going to say if there's opportunities prior to a determination this is eligible or not, I know there have been occasions where we contact the grantee and say, hey, it looks like you forgot to include the bids. Did you get them? Oh, yeah, we did. Oh, my gosh, I completely forgot that. Yeah, let me get them to you. So I don't know where we want to go on that. And like I said, I know it's off the motion topic, but
At this point,
I
it's
just
too late.
give a
It
little
should have been
fave
in
on
the
that one.
questioning phase. So we're kind of,
yeah, we're not talking about that for this one, but just for future consideration. So did that answer your question, Nydia? I'm sorry.
okay. that's a conversation. If anyone else has any conversations, anybody willing to start the approval of whether or not we're going
Well, we
to
have a
strike this
motion.
one from?
It's
We have the motion.
on the board, and
It's- yeah.
it's been seconded.
It's been seconded, so roll call? Roll call vote? Whether or not we're going to,
Do we want to do all in favor, or do you want to do a roll call?
Well, what are we going to do? We're going to basically reject the application.
The motion
Because
that
it
I
didn't
made.
meet the requirements of
Right,
that.
that
That's
it's
the
not
motion.
eligible for funding this
Okay.
cycle
All
because they
right.
didn't follow the guidance. But we can certainly still talk about it. I don't know, if there's not consensus, I can withdraw the motion.
I don't
think
think
you
you can. No.
Once we make a decision, we
okay.
should stick with that decision. and
I
not
know,
have-
but you can withdraw motion. That's what I'm saying. If there's not consensus, I can
As long as
withdraw
we
the
haven't voted
motion.
on it yet.
But we're at the point where we're going to vote on it.
Any other questions or concerns?
Okay.
Okay.
The only thing I had was it just, at this point, without going back, re-reviewing the documents, looking at it, it would be challenging for me to rescind that, but we'll
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely two, there's the specific
catch
question.
that as
Yeah.
well as you guys did.
I mean, there's the specific question, are you requesting for capital expenditures, $250 or more? And they definitely checked no, when I don't think that was the case. And then there was, if you are doing it, please attach bids, and there was no attachment. So I think in those two levels, there was an opportunity to be real clear on what they were requesting and what we were asking them for in the application.
In addition to the project budget, too, there was very little specificity in the project budget as well.
Roll call or all in favor? What do you think?
How do you normally do it?
I think we do all in favor.
Okay.
Yeah, if it's too close, then you can call for roll call, but we could start with, if everyone votes at the same time, if there sounds overwhelmingly one or the other, then.
Okay, the motion is Commissioner Carroll enter the motion to reject the application for Shelters Provided Home Aid Sacramento due to the organization being ineligible because they did not submit the 3 bids for the capital expenditures. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 No?
And no, the nay.
No. Okay. Okay.
Motion carries?
Carries.
So we know what we're doing there.
They're out of there.
May I switch places with Chair Gibson?
I know.
Yeah? Okay.
Okay, so. I'm so disappointed.
We'll see if it comes up. Yeah, I know. I feel bad. I'm already on their bad list. So.
Yeah, I do. I am too. But I was like, I've got, maybe we'll have to suffer with me one more every year. One more cycle. He's with you, though, Chris.
Oh, so Commissioner Perez is gone now. We talk about the other. Yeah.
Scare Jonathan away.
Maybe.
Do we need to wait for him to come back?
Oh, even Jonathan, I was just thinking of.
Maybe something happened. Is he under his desk?
We can hold.
So I assume we can move on to talk about Keaton Child Cancer Alliance? Comments, commissioners?
Well, their work is just always amazing. You know, they do, again, this is another situation where they serve a small group, and I loved that they came in with the program for the families because, was this one, this was for the education in the schools? Yes. They had multiple things, so I got confused. I think that that's a very important program. Again, impact. Even though it may be 1 or 2 kids in the school, you've got, that hundreds of kids that are being impacted that then take the information out to their families and the community. So I wish it was scored higher. I don't have any other, real eye-opening or any passionate issues with the application. I love their work.
So the only comment I have that I made was that over 70% of their budget is overhead.
I didn't catch that.
So I just, that was a mental note for me.
Yeah, I mean, part of me feels like with this, given where it's ranking, I don't know whether we need to resolve everything right now, although again, Commissioner Perez is not here and can't be here when we talk about it. But I'm just wondering if it would be more appropriate for us to go to other categories, see where our fully funding line is, recalculate available funds, and then, then we get into more of those other levels because we'd probably be partially funding those, and how do we determine those lines? So it almost feels like it would, to me, it would be premature to get down to the very bottom of this category before we move on to the others and talk about fully funding the top groups.
I agree.
But this was a funding of a position. This was for Keaton.
Were we going to move on without any motions in any category until we get through them all? Is that what we were decided?
We hadn't decided that. So I guess the question is, do we typically do a motion for fully fund, a motion for partial fund, and then obviously with recusals, those separate? Or can we do fully and partial fund together in a motion for a category?
Last time you guys said, like, the ones that weren't recused, they said, we fully fund, 1, 2, 4, 6, and you made a motion for that, and everybody was a part of it. And then when and then the ones that were partially funded, or the recommended, based off of this recommended, you'd say 3, 5, and 7.
So it was separate between
They
fully
were all
funded and
separate. There were
partial.
6 different motions last time.
Yeah, so I mean, I suppose we could, it sounded like before we had agreement for the top 2 to fully fund. So if we wanted, and I know we're still talking about number 6 because Commissioner Perez is out there. But I mean, I think we have consensus on the top fully funded. If we want a separate motion, I think we could do that. But it's up to the commission's preference.
Okay. I would propose for the strategic one-time grants that we fully fund Blue Line Arts and Youth for Christ Sacramento for their request based on the application.
Will
they
we
submitted.
bring Commissioner Perez back?
say.
And I think before a motion, we need public comment
Yes.
then. Sorry.
Okay, got ahead of
Out of
things.
order.
It's all right, no.
Okay, so we're done talking about Keaton's?
Well, if we want to talk anymore, we
I
can.
thought we were done, but
Are we done?
We don't know.
We are now.
Okay.
I think we
you're back
agreed to,
later.
yeah,
Okay.
I think there's consensus to.
yeah, to hold, yeah.
So before Commissioner Cruz makes a motion, do we want to open up for public comment? Or do we want to explain, I think where we are is we clarified while you were out that in the past, we've done one motion to fully fund in a certain category and a separate motion to partially fund. And so we were kind of talking about, we think we have consensus for this first category on the fully funded. And before we have a motion, if we're ready to do that, we need to open up for public comment.
we do. We do?
Yes.
You do need to open up for a public comment, yes.
Or motion.
Public comment before any
Action.
actions are proposed. Okay.
Does that make sense where we are? Yeah. Okay.
So I'd like to open up for public comment on just the strategic one-time grant discussion.
Sounds like that's me.
Introduce yourself.
I'm Ed Kesmerick. I'm the Executive Director of Youth for Christ Campus Life Connection. And we're here because it's important to us. And I would like to say I'm so very thankful to be on this side of that desk. Job that you have. There's a lot of great organizations. I'm overwhelmed when I look at the funding you have to decide about. But speaking for our organization, I think we targeted a really special project here, and I'm very, very excited that you perhaps are going to fully fund it. It won't pay for all of it, but that's typical, but it will help us with a big chunk of seed money to make this happen. And it's going to be a place where kids can meet and continue to meet, specifically Roseville kids who come to our programs. You may be aware that most people if given a choice between stubbing a toe or working with a teenager, toe. But I have with me tonight CJ Solomon, who's one of our great workers that works with kids. He's all over Roseville, as well as all over Placer County working with kids. I'd love to give him a few minutes just to thank you and tell you a little bit about what you're actually funding that's going to help us so much. So, CJ.
Thank you for your comments.
Sorry, pretty tall. Yeah, just excited to be here, second that. And I agree with I'd rather be on this side than that side. But yeah, we, through Campus Life, through Youth for Christ, and also Point Break, which is a school assembly program that we do, we reach a lot of the Roseville schools. And we just appreciate just you guys hearing us and hearing our requests to make more of a difference in students' lives. So yeah, that's we meet weekly at our teen center, and summer in previous years before COVID, the teen center was open multiple days, and we want to get back to that place where it's just a place where it's wide open for teens to come and just be kids, in a safe environment, fun environment, but also get the encouragement they need, the support they need, mentorship, and everything. So we just appreciate, just all of the things that you have to do on that end. I'm over here sweating over here, like, oh goodness. But we thank you so much. Was there any specific questions for?
I have a question.
Yes.
Just a point of clarification. You mentioned you guys have run Point Break in the past.
Yes.
That's the assembly that was at the high school, K through 8, and middle school and high school?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to be doing more of that.
So
at your teen center.
along with another partner, we run Point Break. So we've been doing that. I took that over about a year ago, and we just had one for Adelante about a few weeks ago. We're working on getting Granite Bay. We have Mesa Verde, but I know Mesa Verde High School is one of the campuses that we're on, but a lot of the kids that we serve, though the school is not in Roseville, a lot of the students are that I'm picking up for an hour and a half or 2 hours every single week live in Roseville. So, but the campuses that we're on every single week are mainly the Roseville ones, so Granite Bay included, but a lot of the kids, Granite Bay High School included, but a lot of the kids come from Roseville as well. So, but with the funding and with our team growing and everything, we want to focus more on the Roseville schools. I think we're starting Ike Middle School. I'm not sure if I think that's in Roseville.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. But as our team continues to grow, we want to get more of the schools that, more of the schools that are
Kids call it.
closer in the radius to the teen center. So we currently, Granite Bay High School, Roseville High, with some of our partners from FCA. I'm on Del Oro, which a lot of the kids, live all over there too. Oakmont, and then we're kicking off Ike, and then Mesa Verde. So, and then the Point Breaks serve all over. So, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else approach the podium, I will close public comment. Entertaining a motion if there is one.
Okay. I would propose a motion for the strategic one-time grant category that we fully fund the first two identified, which is Blue Line Arts and Youth for Christ Sacramento.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
So we have a motion to fully fund the Blue Line Arts building mural and the Youth for Christ Sacramento Roseville Thriving Youth Program. Motion from Commissioner Kriz and a second from Commissioner Haywood. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Then what would the commissioners like to go to a different category, or did you want to partial fund some in this category?
I think we should go look at where we draw the line on the other categories. I would recommendation as far as where we would try to identify full funding in the other categories. It would be my preference.
And how about a preference of the next category to review?
See, we have interested parties in the next category. So operational mission support is my vote.
I guess my only concern would be, and
Got a
again,
recusal.
well, we have plenty of recusals in this category, but, you know, the small-time requests are 1/10 of the funding, or whatever. I would hate to, like, fully fund in the operational mission support and then miss all the small-time grants, but that's up to the group
Yeah, no,
here.
we can certainly move to that. I don't think with the amount of money we have, we're going to do
Yeah,
that,
we're
but,
not
but I
confident.
totally support moving to the smaller ones, that's fine.
Okay, so in this category, wow,
The first two are similar.
we have recusals for number 1.
If I could jump in real quick, we had a similar issue last year where they're in the small requests category. 2 of the applications ranked exactly the same. So if you see on the slide, there are 2 number 6s. So I would like to ask, luckily, there's no recusals. Haha. So if you guys could decide as a group which number 6 is going to be 6, and then everything else will go down 7, 8, 9.
I don't know if we have to do that right now, but if we do, I think based on the funding, and maybe I'm beating Commissioner Reed to this, but it looks like one of them is only funded less than half.
Well, one's 57%, one's 71%.
Yeah, so I think the 71% seems like it would be the higher.
I would, so Wayfinder Family Services would be, let's call that 6.1, and
okay.
Life Skill Training Education Systems would be 6.2.
Do we need to vote on that?
Conversation.
So back to recusals, number 12, 9, and 11. 1, 9, 11, and 12 are our recusals. What would the commissioners like to discuss first?
I think our number 1 might be an easier conversation if we want to have the commissioner recuse herself.
I will recuse myself from number 1.
There's not much going on in there. Go ahead.
Bring
a
a
calculator.
Yeah, bring it. Or bring a phone.
She'll be quick. I think based on our consensus approach, I support fully funding the first one. It was the top ranked, and it seemed like a good project, and I didn't have any concerns when I read the application.
I didn't either.
And this is one of those that benefits the immediate area and then everyone who comes through there. So how do you even count? But yeah. And I like that it was a different kind of project from, we have which is awesome, and we need that, the health and wellness, but this one, was a little different, and it's nice to have the opportunity there.
This is Commissioner Perez. I would like to go on record saying I would like to fully fund this, and I would also like to see some support from city, some other funding, because looking at this grant in general, this is going to pay for a tiny chunk. This is one chunk of a whole lot of sidewalks that really need to be rehabilitated. And I would like to ask City Council to consider helping with that project, because I think that this part of town needs some help, refurbishment. I think it's a beautiful community, it's a historic community, and it touches a lot of people. And I love that the Grants Commission is able to do this, but it's a big full project that I think could use some collaboration.
Yeah, I don't know that we have any, we could certainly go to council and say, hey, we're supporting this and we want you guys to kick in some more. You have discretionary funds. But I think it's also kind of going back to Arcona to say.
I feel like that might be up to Arcona, but I would love to see some collaboration throughout the city for this to happen, because I think that's.
Just for some background, I do know that our Development Services Department is aware of this topic, and I think that there have been some conversations that have occurred. I haven't been involved in them, so I can't fully inform this commission, but I do know it is on the radar, and there's been conversations.
I'm happy to be part of the commission that gets the funding started.
And Commissioner Perez, thank you for those comments. I had very similar thoughts as I was reading the application. Thank you, Jonathan, for the input. I kind of had a intuitional feeling there were probably conversations happening, so that's probably why it wasn't like immediate on my radar, but it's good to hear that
Yes,
there is support.
absolutely.
Point of clarification, since this is one where we have a conflict, it sounds like we have consensus. I'm wondering if it would be appropriate for us to go ahead. I know we need to open to public comment, but if we'd want to go ahead and do a motion to fully fund this one now, knowing that we have a commissioner that's.
Are you talking about just going one at a time? as we
No,
go?
just for this particular
So
one.
it's got a
since we have
recusal on it.
Oh, I see.
To
Okay.
go ahead and get a motion to get this one off the, not off the list, on the list, I don't know. But
Right,
just to
right.
move this off the
To
discussion.
be able to get our full commission back. Mhm.
Yes.
I get it now.
So then, are we good with opening it up to public comment?
I believe so.
Chair Gibson?
So I'd like to open up for public comment on this category.
Come on down.
I've lived in my house for 23 years. This isn't my sidewalk, but I know that there's, and we'll be back, so I know, we applied last year and never even got through the screening process because of some procedural, the Arcona Historic Sierra Vista, how to apply piece. But now, we started small. We got one sidewalk because that's our test run that we figured out now the procedure for doing this. But yeah, we very much need sidewalks, and we are going to partner with the City of Roseville to get this one in. But we do really need more. It's been 80 years since the last time we had a president who invested greatly in America's infrastructure. So I don't know how much longer it'll take before we get another. So we got to do what we can. Thank you.
Can you state your name?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Glenda Hay. I live on Alta Vista Avenue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenda. A true testament to community coming together. Thank you. I'd like to close public comment. Do we have a motion to fully fund Racona for their historic Sierra Vista sidewalks?
Commissioner Perez would like to entertain would like to make a motion to fully fund.
Do we have a second?
Second.
So Commissioner Perez has motioned to approve 100% funding for the historic Sierra Vista sidewalks, and Commissioner Haywood has seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes.
Okay.
Let's bring Commissioner Reed back in.
Welcome back.
Thank you. So we do have the ability to discuss all but 9, 11, and 12, if the commission would like there to move forward on that.
And I think we were going to discuss the dividing line.
Right.
As far as fully funding. I do want to just make a comment about the pedal connection. Again, they're better this year, but this is the second or third year in a row where this particular organization's come in and been very vague with the total number of people being served in Roseville. They did throw a number in this year, so, it makes me a little happier. I think they said 3,000 people. But I would have liked to have seen a connection between how their expanded services and the additional people that they're bringing in and the additional hours would have directly impacted the homebound in Roseville. The community centers, maybe. They can't necessarily tell us which centers, maybe for HIPAA, but just to give us a better idea of the number of people in Roseville. This one's a tough one for me because they do such great work, and they really do have a huge impact for all the categories that we've already talked about. I don't feel as strongly about this one being disqualified or, adversely impacted because of the lack of numbers, but that did play into my ranking and funding recommendation for this particular nonprofit. Again, I was disappointed to see that they didn't really have that connection.
Thank you, Commissioner Haywood.
I would like to make a comment that I felt similar about the defending the cause as far as being vague about specifically what they are supporting as far as support to the nonprofits that they partner with. I would like to see more description in that as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Perez.
Just for consistency, Commissioner Reed, I don't know if you're at the ready with your percentages. Did you have those? And I wonder if we could, using those, see what the natural break might be.
No, I don't.
I'm sorry to put you
No,
on the
you're fine.
spot.
I was looking.
I did.
The percentages, since I have Excel, I was able to just do them quickly once, once Commissioner Reed started. It's hard, though, because it doesn't appear that there's a natural break. If I go down from one, starting at 1, it's 83%, 83%, 64%, then back up to 83%. That's for number 4, Friends of the Library. Then down to 60%, and back up to 71%. Life skills training gets down to 57%. So that could be a natural break. The lowest.
I think it's hard when you're dealing with small numbers because they can
Right.
be impacted
Right.
so quickly.
Yeah.
So,
I think in this category, we should go with what the rankings are, only because $2,500, you just, like you said, all of a sudden they're in 50% because they've got such a small ask. But
yeah, looking at, for me, where the break point would be at number 8. That would be,
That would be in or out?
I would agree.
well, I mean, it's 59%, about 60%. And then everything,
That next one is less than half.
And we're just make sure I'm on the same page. This is the demarcation line for fully funding, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
yes.
I just think using percentages in this, with these small numbers, makes it not really fair.
Yeah, no. I just wanted to make sure my brain was functioning properly. And I know I use fancy words, but the numbers give me numbers, and I'm like off. My eyes go blank. So, just trying to make sure I am on the same page.
I'm gonna unless we have more discussion, I was gonna make a bold suggestion. I think for the small requests, I'd be tempted to fully fund maybe up through row 8. We don't have any recusals other than the first one, which we've already addressed, and then leave the rest. Either we could talk about them and we have recusals, or go to that next category. I mean, while I have some particular things with some of these too, because they are small requests and because I felt, I don't know how you guys did, in reviewing all these applications, I mean, there are a lot of good things, but we had a lot of money compared to what we normally have.
Right.
And part of me, this isn't specific to this, part of me felt like as I was going through there, do we have to, I mean, the ARPA we do, but on the other stuff, do we have to spend all the money just to spend it? And that may be a discussion for later as we're working through some of this. But I felt like on the small requests, the amount of money involved here, given if we're going by the rankings, I feel like that's appropriate, or I'd like to at least get opinions from people.
Are you saying cutting below United Cerebral Palsy, or are you including Silver Wishes?
I think when Commissioner Kriz was saying the line was right after Silver Wishes,
Okay.
between
Silver
8
Wishes,
and 9.
yeah.
So just for a discussion item, if we fully funded from there up.
Yeah, I do want to make a note, and I don't think it's an issue. Silver Wishes, I think, was the other one where they're asking for a piece of equipment. Don't think the equipment would be more than the 250 threshold, but they're another one. They came in last year, the same thing. So, I'm going to throw it out there. That was another one that had a challenge for me.
Scooters and things can be.
Well, and also, we had this discussion last year also as far as the number of people that are actually served and the impact that those funds could have in the community. And this is serving 2 or 3 of, the need is there, but could that,
But then we got the same issue with peers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, yeah.
that's, I'm bringing it up more from the qualification standpoint, since we, just from the qualification standpoint, and whether or not we need to look at the issue of, does this organization is the equipment they're looking for a bid, and I can't remember if they did submit the bids or not on this one. I don't think they did, but I could be wrong.
Do we have a way to check? Are you guys able to go in their application to check, or can you, Commissioner Cruz?
I don't have that
I
information.
don't know if you had it on your computer.
Are you asking us to look to see if they,
If the requested equipment, like a scooter or something like that, if it's more than 250, that is a bid item.
Oh.
And I feel like since we already disqualified one group for that, it's not fair to, I mean,
I believe this one was the one where they kept it open, where it said, depending on what you fund, it could range what we do. So they had like 3 different things and gave you the value of each one. So you don't really know what the number is, or at least they didn't specify because they don't know how much they're going to get funded. But I don't recall if there were attachments.
we're logging in.
well, as we're looking into that, maybe we do 7 and up, and then we see what happens with 8. But I don't know if that helps move us along, or we want to go into more discussion.
And I'm not saying they're not worthy of funding, we just have
Oh,
to
for any of
be
these.
consistent,
I agree.
so.
I think it also has to be considered how hard it is to procure a particular item and how many sources of pricing options are available. I know in this particular case, you have to provide new. There's a liability.
Right.
I know in my,
that's-
I
no
couldn't
problem
give
with
away
that.
a wheelchair,
Yeah.
I just because
Yeah.
they were like, no, we can't take it.
But this
so.
one, I think Biscoff and there's some other, they even
be
cited,
surprised.
they even cited their suppliers.
Yeah, they
So, as
did.
I remember.
They did.
Because I was like, I know where that is. So, in Roseville even.
Right.
So, yeah, and that line of product, there are more than 3 places that would provide new equipment
Well,
like that.
I think I would be, my only caution on that particular subject is it was not outlined in our workshop, focusing on that, and it's not an item staff is charged with checking. Meaning when they say, does this application qualify or not, they could disqualify a bunch of these for not getting their 3 bids, but that's not something they look at as part of the qualification process. So I think you just need to go with, if you feel that's I would hate to state it's a policy versus that's something you feel is a necessary thing and score your application accordingly.
Well, but in the guidelines, we do talk about capital equipment in the workshop. We definitely did. And if we're not going to enforce it, we shouldn't have it in our application.
Then it needs to be an item for disqualification of an incomplete application.
And that's what I was suggesting for future cycle.
Then I don't think we can use it as a tool, a sword in this cycle when it's not something that was.
Yeah, we already.
Well, I wasn't here, but I'm saying, my belief was if you're not clear that that is a disqualifying item, like not providing your business license or doing this, that is it fair? But
It's one of the
But it is one of
attachments
the
on the
attachments.
But it's
list.
not listed as a disqualified criteria that staff looks at to disqualify an
Well,
application.
first off, the applicants don't know what staff looks at. That's something that has changed over the years.
Right.
Sometimes the commission
We
reviewed
used
it
to,
all.
we used to actually go through the whole applications and we would make the decisions. We wouldn't be having this conversation potentially if the commissioners had been looking at the applications and we were looking at the applications in conjunction with the attachments. So that we were looking at the whole package and making the disqualifications up front and then doing our rankings the following meetings.
You ranked it according to your unpleasantry with not them, or your idea that they didn't get 3 bids, where I might have said, well, that didn't matter to me. So if we're not all on the same page, how is it fair?
We're not on the same page on a lot of these things, though. It is a
And
very
you're talking
subjective-
about a disqualifying
Yep.
item.
I agree. It is a serious thing, and I think we do need to be consistent. But I think in good faith, when you read through that application, it says if it's over 250 or more, you need to mark it and you need to supply the bids. And to me, I thought that was a city requirement, which is why the 250 was so low. Because we've even asked in multiple years since I've been on the commission, can't we raise that 250? That's super low. And we were told, no, that's a city thing.
I think staff has an update.
So they proposed the possibility of purchasing 3 different items. A wheelchair that's approximately $350, walkers that are approximately $150, or mobility scooters for $1,500. So those were the three possible options. And then at the very bottom, it says, if requesting capital for property improvement or capital expenditures, have you included the required bids? And it says not applicable.
And I want to add one thing that's relevant, somewhat not. But if you all recall, I believe this was the application that wanted to fund one scooter last time. And you have the application pulled up. But they noted, you have to write, how did you spend the money? And it said that they requested that, but how they spent the money was different, I think, from what I recall. It was for the van and a different cause, a different need as much, just different than what was written in the grant. This time, I think it's written in a way that's more broad and vague, but last time it seemed like it was spent differently than what we thought it was.
Yeah. Technically, isn't a capital expenditure something that, okay, I see a capital expenditure as something that is going to bring added value to the nonprofit, like
Copy machine.
a copy machine.
I see where you're going, and our policy manual does talk about it framed in the capital projects context, and generally capital projects refer to enhancing your property versus potentially an item like this where it's not connected to your property. Again, ultimately, it's your tough decision to make on this particular application, but the policy manual does reference capital projects.
I think that is part of where the gray area is as far as the whole 3 bids and the $250, the capital expense. It's if I'm a nonprofit and I want to spend this for a wheelchair, or if I'm spending it on, I'm afraid to say anything because I'm afraid to talk on something that somebody's recused on. But if I want to spend something on a wheelchair for somebody that I'm trying to support, or I find that different than I would want to spend money for new office furniture for my facility that I provide services out of. In my mind, that would definitely be a capital expenditure because I could then turn around and resell that if I want to, because that's something that adds to my list of assets, where the wheelchair does not. So I see the 3, to me, that's different because I now have a tangible asset with that, and I definitely see more importance for having the 3 bids for that than I do something that you're going to give away. But I do also see the importance of the 3 bids thing too.
Right. It's almost a consumable for the objective of what they have here and the equipment that they're going to be providing to folks for mobility.
Right.
And I just, point of historical reference, this definition has been discussed before where applications for musical instruments were disqualified. Again, doesn't necessarily, it's not a, and that's what, there was some disagreement where the proposing organizations like, no, this is not a physical change to our building or property. It's a piece of equipment. But the commission at the time said, no, you should have had 3 bids, we're disqualifying you. So it's a little bit of history here. Again, something maybe to take it back for consideration for next cycle, being a little more clear on or reiterating what the definition of capital is in terms of what we're going to determine in terms of qualifying versus disqualifying for the future. And again, I do want to point out that I brought this to everyone's attention simply as a clarification because I'd missed the conversation last year. So I wanted to make sure we were all on the same page. And in terms of this, I'm not saying that I'm not disagreeing necessarily with any of the arguments here. I think we just need to make a decision and move forward.
Yeah. But I think there's value, and I don't want to ask applicants to do something if we aren't going to follow through. And then I think it's unfair to require some groups to do stuff, and then other groups, if they didn't, then there's equal consideration, because it feels like.
Except you could ask different people what a capital expenditure is. If you asked an accountant.
We have a definition in there that says useful life of a year or more and over 250. Because again,
For the organization, though, this is not, if the wheelchair is being used at their site, but this is a gift to somebody. It's not it's not enhancing their balance sheet in any fashion, and it's not something they're going to have that bring, to your point, that brings value to the organization and/or that they could turn around and sell if they don't need it anymore. And so, and I don't feel that the definition has been clearly defined based on some policy and procedure that specifically would categorize this or maybe some other things as needing 3 bids. So, but I can nay on the vote too, so I have that power. So because it seems like we've got a lot of discussion on that, do you want to go to fully funding 1 through 7? And then circle back?
Or 2 through 7.
2
I
through
like that
7, sorry.
idea.
I forgot we had the, you left the room.
I could leave again.
You don't need to. We've already,
You need to vote.
You're clear. Do
yeah, do we
need public hearing again?
We do. I was going to say, it feels like we have consensus on the 2 through 7, so do you want to open for public comment?
Do we have public comment on our discussion on organizations that are ranked 2 through 7?
Can you confirm, is that number 7 is technically United Cerebral Palsy Association?
Yes, and
Because
6,
our numbers
we,
changed
6A
a
and
little
B
bit.
or 1 and 2?
we did
yeah.
6.1
B.
as Wayfinder and 6.2 as life skills training and education.
Both of those are included.
Welcome to the podium.
I'm James Calkins, 105 4th Street in Roseville. In reporting your self to the IRS as a nonprofit on the 990 form, a capital improvement is anything that would last a year or more. And if you took a wheelchair in order to give it to someone else, you would have to record it on your form as you took it and who you gave it to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that clarification. And I think definitely lesson for us is, again, we want to be transparent. We don't want any organization to feel like something switched in the process or they weren't treated the same way as another. But
I'd like to close public comment. Is there a motion from any commissioners?
Sure, I will move that we would fully fund the small grant requests, 2 through 7. So that'll be the Pedal Connection, Defending the Cause Regional Alliance, Friends of Roseville Public Library, Placer Independent Resource Services, Life Skill Training Educational Programs, Wayfinder Family Services, and United Cerebral Palsy Association for Greater Sacramento.
Thank you, Commissioner Chris. Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you. So we have a motion to approve 100% funding for the Pedal Connection, Defending the Cause, Friends of Roseville Public Library, Placer Independent Resources, Life Skills, Wayfair Family Services, Life Skills Training and Education, and United Cerebral Palsy, and a second by Commissioner Reed. May we have a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye. Okay, motion carries.
Are you a nay? I'm sorry. When I
Oh,
said
yeah.
opposed, you were saying nay or
No,
aye?
I was saying nay. Nay.
Nay.
Nay.
Nay.
Yes, okay, but motion carries.
Carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Perez. Sorry.
We're all
just going
done.
to say a quick little thing. I thought it was kind of cool, again, in the spirit of new applicants and new kind of projects, the Roseville reads. So hopefully we'll hear more about that now that they've got some seed money for it.
Okay, so moving to the next category to set a benchmark for 100% funding is the Operation Mission Support. And our recusals are,
Yes, I have one on number 2, and I would be happy to leave at the moment to take a break.
and then, pardon? Oh, here, you're leading.
Lead this?
Yes, Commissioner Perez is going to lead the conversation because I'm
Okay.
out of breath.
Are we both?
We're all tongue-tied, so now I'm going to take over. Woo-hoo. Okay, operational missional support.
Are we
We're going to first talk about, or have all the commissioners know what are the recusals, so we all have that list.
Okay, so we have a recusal for number 2, and that is Commissioner Carroll. We have Cancer Wellness Within. That is Commissioner Reed.
Just so we get into the practice, when we have the recusals, the individual commissioner should really state that they're recused and that
Us doing it?
the reason why, if it's a potential conflict of interest for a particular organization, then just state that for the record.
Okay. The reason why it's a conflict of interest?
Just stating that it is either an actual conflict of interest or potential conflict of interest if you're
Okay.
unsure.
Okay. I think probably we'll start with number 2, and then go from there.
Would you like me, I'm recusing of a potential conflict of interest, and I'm going to step out if that works for everyone. Can I go out there instead of in here?
Yes,
I'm
but
gonna
then
use-
stay out there
I will
until.
stay, I will stay,
Yeah.
someone just needs to come in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I'd like to open up discussion for applicant 2, a touch of understanding.
I just love what they do. It's just like they're Keatons, you know. My kids still talk about it. Well, I don't know if they still talk about it, but I remember when my kids came home, both of them talking about that, their program that they take into the school.
Any other discussion?
I mean, I think it's helpful. They're addressing the school children and helping working on minimizing bullying. And it creates community involvement.
Anybody opposed?
Well, this really is an in-school program, right? Anything from our youth commissioner that you might have to, want to add on this one, possibly?
I've definitely seen like similar sort of clubs in like my school and like some like school districts. It's a great program, especially like high school. It's kind of, especially since the pandemic, people have been feeling like a little more disconnected. But it's great that they're doing like making these efforts to like make sure that people feel included. So
Okay, thank you.
Before we entertain a motion, it kind of seems like we're all pretty much on the same page with this. I can open it up for public comment about a touch of understanding, if anybody would like to come up and speak. Seeing no public comment, we'll close public comment. And I'll entertain a motion to fully fund a touch of understanding.
So moved?
Okay,
Second.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Who's second?
Chair Gibson.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Before we move on to the next recusal, are you guys comfortable helping us re-rank the 2 number 4s and the 2 number 5s? Again, no recusals on these 4.
Okay, yeah?
Right.
I think we could do it the same way we did it with the other one. So then for the number 4s, the top one is the ALGP, Assistant League of Greater Placer. That's 92%. And then Roseville Police Activities League is 83%. So that could stay in the order 4.1, 4.2. And then number 5, again, if we keep it in that order, Seniors First is 81%, and Sierra College is 73%.
So it works. Okay. Everybody good on that? Cool. Okay, should we roll out with, should we try and vote all the way down to 1 and 3 through 5?
5.2.
Sorry, 5.4, yeah, 5.2, sorry.
To fully fund, correct?
To fully fund, I'll open it up for discussion or make a motion, entertain a motion. Public comment. Oh, yeah, we do need to open this up for public comment.
Okay.
Okay. I'll open it up for public comment. Come on up.
Gary McDonald, Executive Director of Lighthouse Counseling and Family Resource Center. I just want to say that we really appreciate all of the support that you've provided us over the years, and that currently we are definitely in a mental health crisis. I'm sure you know that there was a shooting in Roseville. There were children who saw the shooting. My wife actually heard the shots. I was at work at the time. I don't recall if I put the CDC study in the proposal. I think I did, but I'm not 100% sure because I write a lot of proposals, and generally on the weekends. So, but 1 out of 10 children in the CDC proposal, in the CDC report that recently came out, 1 out of 10 students attempted suicide. I don't know if that's over the course of their lifetime or within the past year, but still 1 out of 10 students is a huge number. And 30% of all teen girls are consistently sad and have a concrete plan to commit suicide. They are seriously considering it. So we really are in a mental health crisis. So I appreciate even just the conversation that you might fully fund our proposal, because we need more staff, and we're doing everything that we can to be as efficient as possible. And for every dollar we spend for the last 3 years, 96 cents funds our program. So we really can't be any more efficient other than just asking our staff to take on more clients when they're already dealing with trauma from the clients that they receive. I recently received an email from my director, my clinical director, and just the intensity of the type of clients we're seeing is way more than it used to be before the pandemic. We're talking about children whose mother, their two parents have died. One student had 2 broken legs. One was had gender identification issues and was contemplating suicide. So the type of client that we're serving has just, it's traumatic for me just even to tell you the stories. And so anyway, I just want to say thank you for your consideration, and we very much appreciate your assistance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, I will entertain a motion to fully fund item 1, 3, 4.1, 4.2, 5.1, and 5.2.
I will move to fully fund the applications that were mentioned. That's basic on our list through Sierra College Foundation for the basic needs, food insecurity assistance.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Sorry, opposed? No opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Thanks.
Before I exit, it might be worth a tally at this time. And
I
I'm
wondered.
accusing myself because I have an opportunity to work on a capital improvement project with CASA.
Do you want me to give the tally?
You can do it for them.
So with all the motions, we have funded $328,436, and what we have left is $276,330. Still quite a bit.
Okay. Good to know.
Okay. Awesome. Sorry, what were those numbers again?
$276,330 left to fund.
Okay.
So we're more than halfway through.
Okay. Open up conversation for CASA. I will start the conversation by saying I think CASA is a great program, and I think that their money is well spent, and I support it.
And we have such a large pool. It's makes sense to fully fund many projects as we can. So I'm in support for several of these moving down. To be, then this one particularly to fully fund it. I don't have any objection to that.
Anybody else have any discussion on CASA?
Oh, I support it.
Okay. I'll go ahead and close discussion and open it up for public comment. If anybody would like to approach the podium about CASA? No? Okay. Seeing no public comment, we'll close public comment. Now we'll entertain a motion to fully fund CASA.
I'll make a motion to fully fund CASA.
Have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Oh, zipping through this.
And our next conflict is not here.
Yeah, so we can now take, where was my other one? Okay, I don't know. Oh, down there, okay.
Okay. I knew someone was, but okay.
Okay, so moving on, we can take a look at from 7 to 10, seeing that there are no recusals in the room for Gigi's Playhouse, Placer Veterans Stand Down, Placer County Law Enforcement Chaplaincy, and Hart's Landing Ranch.
Okay, I'm wondering, because we are getting down, whether we need to start making decisions, whether we revisit full funding in small requests, or if we are going to start having the discussion of partially funding.
What's the tally, please?
Now we're at 22630 left, right? We just
330.
did 50,000.
Yep. Sorry, my shoulder.
Yeah, it's 225,730 is what we have left.
50,600. I missed the 600.
So I think my question would be, are there applications in those other categories that there are commissioners that feel very strongly about? That may want to, versus, continuing on with.
For the first category, well, we don't have anyone recused right now. For the first category, I had a question about probably our next one in a row, which is line 6. And then I do have recusal in the third group. And plus, we have our issue of.
All right, again, I lost you.
Line 6?
Sorry, did I?
Which one are you
Row
referring?
5, okay, Roseville Community School, I have no recusal, but I have a question about that one. And then I also, back up there. Yeah, okay, so I'm not really helping. I have a clarification that could impact whether we want to fund them or not. But I don't know that I have a strong, yes, I definitely want to fund these other groups in the other category, so.
So you're talking about going back to the one-time grants?
Well, I think she was asking before
there
we
any ones-
continue on with funding the Operation Mission Support that tend to be bigger, are there others in the other group that we feel strongly about?
I see.
Because we did talk about Placer Food Bank, and then, of course, the small grants as well. So I just wanted to, before we spend all our money,
Yeah.
that we just give fair discussion to and resolve those issues as well, or applications, my wrong words.
So would you like to go back to strategic one time and make sure we don't leave anybody out that you feel strongly about? Like you were talking about Placer Food Bank?
I don't really feel super strongly. But yeah, I think we need to have the discussion, just make sure we are very clear whether or not we're going to go back. Because we did talk about partially funding
Right.
Placer Food Bank. That would probably be the only one that I'd like to revisit specifically, only because we did have a preliminary discussion about potentially partially funding that application. So I don't feel we came to a resolution on that particular application.
Well, that particular application could be 1/5 of the money we have left, so it might be important to have the discussion.
Agreed.
We just we would do the recommended average amount on that one, and maybe that's when we start
Well,
partially
that's what I
funding
mean. It's still 45,000 is like 1/5 of what
Yeah,
we've got.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
If you don't mind, because I think it'll be a more, more straightforward discussion on the Roseville Community School one. This was the one that they are not the property owner, they have a lease agreement, but it's for
county.
5 years. So I personally, with 5 years, felt that that was okay, but that's another different one that we specifically ask if you are not the property owner, do you have a lease? But then we don't really have
Criteria
guidance behind
established.
it. So it just felt like, in fairness with all the other stuff we're discussing, I'd feel remiss if we didn't bring that out. I don't have a problem with it for 5 years, and if they had a 1-year lease or a 2-year lease, and the 5 years started October of last year, so we definitely have. But just, I noted that, and that was a little different. They did supply the capital expenditure bids, but it is a lease property. It's actually at the grounds, right?
Yes.
So it's not one that they own.
Maybe this is where we just go back to the Placer Food Bank. We all seem to feel very strongly about the strength of that organization and recommend to partially fund it, then go to the small ones and see if there's any there, and then, go back. But I don't know if we need to exhaust the whole category, or is that what you're looking for?
I don't know that we need to. I mean, I like your approach of if we feel strongly about supporting some of these other ones.
Let's not leave them out before
Yeah.
we run out of money. was
Exactly.
my idea.
I agree with you. And again, the only one I heard us really talking about potentially funding in the large grant, or the one time, was really the Placer Food Bank. So I'm good with just having that discussion.
That's the one I recall too. Because I don't remember us having a strong discussion about the others at
Correct.
that moment.
Correct.
So,
Christmas, Chris?
so we're on strategic one-time grants now.
Right.
Yes.
That's a page. I would entertain taking the next two at the average amount.
Hold on, I'll have to leave.
We have a recusal.
Oh, we have a recusal on one of those?
Yeah,
Okay.
but we've already made a decision on one of those.
Well, let's start with, because I have a recusal, let's,
Placer Food Bank and Roseville Community School.
Right.
oh, I see what you're saying.
That's not a recusal then, sorry. We got confused.
Right, so it's, the other one we're done with already.
Yeah.
So it would be, so the average amount for those two,
You mean the recommended, average recommended?
yes, average recommended by the, it's the commissioner's recommended average.
So for Placer Food Bank and Roseville Community School, funding at the partial level that's on here, 45,618 and 19,107. Oh, and this isn't a motion because we'd have to have public comment.
Right, but I just,
We need to be clear what we're.
clear before we open to public comment, is everybody in agreement
Right.
on that? I mean, I inclined to just
funding for
do
those.
Placer Food Bank and go to another category and come back, but. Any comment, any thoughts about that, or?
Strong feelings.
It is warm in here, ladies.
Yes.
That's to get us to go faster, Anna.
But let's open up for public comment, since we're considering those two, if there is any. We've lost our public.
You'll have a few.
Seeing no one come to the podium, I'm going to close for public comment.
So now we're still discussing whether we take those two
Or
or just
just
do the
one and keep going.
Can I impose on you, Ania, since the one is the community school? Anything you wanted to share on either of those, really, but particularly that one?
In all honesty, I never really seen it, so, but, I mean, I'm sure like any like repairs to like a school would be like great thing for like the students, like the general like younger like population of Roseville.
So one of the notes that I made was it is an alternative learning option for the residents of Roseville. And the partially funding gets them their life safety repairs versus their storage sheds. It gets them repairing gutters and siding, which is a water hazard. You can get a
Yeah.
shed anytime. So in this particular application, I did notice that I believe that partial funding would cover their life safety repairs, which I think is a really great thing.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Good
Yeah.
clarification, I didn't realize that.
They do really great work, and it is a very students youth that come out of that program are incredible. Their ability to interact with other human beings is at a level that I have never seen before. I know a few people who've gone through the school many, many years ago. So, and it's just a great option for people. So it is a community asset in that respect. Plus, it's on the grounds, so there are thousands and thousands of people going through there all the time, and it would be great to be able to showcase that facility as improved to match the renovations that have been done on the barns and other halls on the fairgrounds side of the grounds.
So entertaining a motion.
Commissioner Perez, I would like to make a motion for the partial funding value for Placer Food Bank and Roseville Community School.
Second?
I will second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Perez to approve the partial average amount proposed for the Placer Food Bank and the Roseville Community School, and a second by Commissioner Chris. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Now, do you guys want to jump to the small ones or continue with mission support?
How much money we got left?
$161,005.
Sorry, what was that again?
$161,005.
So again, I would probably ask the same thing from their fellow commissioners. Is there anything that anyone feels really strongly about in the small requests that we should really consider? Before we go back to the mission support.
At this point, should we have, did you leave the room yet for the
I did not leave the
small
room
requests?
for number 9 if I need to vacate.
I feel like you should.
Okay. I am recusing myself from
professional.
supporting the Taylor House as I have worked with them recently.
I'll start the conversation on the Taylor House. I think they do a fantastic job living in the neighborhood. I've seen what they've done over the years. And I fully support actually fully funding this one.
I'm familiar with them. I feel like they do great work too. I guess while $10,000, at one level, I feel like that's totally appropriate. I also feel like in the rankings and combining those with some of the other things on the mission support category, and now that we're getting down to less money, I'm not sure where I land on fully funding versus partial funding, given other groups that I also would like to support. But I think it's a great organization, and yeah, I mean, this particular community, foster youth and aged out foster youth, is so vulnerable, and whatever we can do to support them, I think is a huge need and definitely has ripple effects in the community, for the positive or the negative, and we'd like it to be positive.
It does, but, and again, this is where we had some of the discussion last year as far as the number served. You know, there's not a lot of girls, but there is great impact on those that are being served, and they are a vulnerable population, so.
Serve the girls that they serve so completely. Like, they make sure that they are going to be launched in an awesome situation. And I think that's important.
And I like that they're new. I mean, I don't know if they've been around for a while, so I don't know if in years past before I was on the commission, they applied, but I think they're new recently, so I like that
Yeah,
too.
I don't recall
year.
them, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to highlight, I think, like, they did an outstanding job in the sense of developing a need and the way they did narrative and writing down and just the impact that they've gone through. And then their proposal, I could just see clearly how what they're trying to invest would make a difference in the need. And it also reminded me a little bit, not to jump, but in the operational mission support, I know no one has a conflict of interest currently, but number 10, Hart's Landing Ranch. So there was a little bit of overlap there since they're requesting support to use.
And I did, that brings a good point. I did have a little concern with the numbers they used for their equine support. They didn't really match what Hart's Landing provided in terms of the actual cost. So I don't know if that, I mean, it's a little technicality. That's just what I do. I find those technicalities. You know, I don't feel really strongly, because I really struggled with this application. And I would be hypocritical if I didn't say that I didn't agree, you know, that they do, that there is a ripple effect. So I don't really have a, I would rather, I would like to see some of these other operational funds supported, now that we're getting down there. You know, and I know there's enough money potentially, you know, to consider at least one of the next operational supports, but, which is a new organization. So I don't feel strongly either way on this one.
So fully or partial, but you feel like some funding is appropriate?
I know,
Even that, okay.
not even that. Yeah.
I feel like the difference of $6,000 and the rest of our pot of money between partially funding and fully funding would make a difference to them.
I didn't follow. So
The difference between partially funding and fully funding with Taylor House,
you think that would make a considerable difference in their impact in the community?
after what Gary was saying with Lighthouse, as
well,
far as, you know, therapy already being stretched then, yeah.
So your recommendation, your thoughts would be to tend towards more of the full funding for Taylor House?
Fully fund Taylor House, yes.
Does anyone remember the numbers for this? Like how many would be served?
10.
Okay.
I had 8
Or
written
maybe
in my
it's 8.
notes.
Maybe it's 8.
8 girls.
Yeah, it's very,
Residential program in a house in
Yeah.
Old Roseville.
Yeah, from the mental health perspective, as a social worker and a therapist, therapy is pretty hard to get into. There's always a need, and even Lighthouse, I know, has had a wait list before in other agencies, so it's very much impacted. Now for this, if I recall, they're requesting funds for therapy and then also for the animal support therapy. So I think either one would be making an impact, but if we did fully fund, it would provide more, I think, extensive care, especially with the trauma impact on them. And that could also tie into the suicidal ideations, or that's where the narrative for me stood out, how they described the difference of when people come in and come out and then the services they receive. And I agree, some of the numbers, when you compare it to Hart's Landing, don't match. It sounds, you know, Hart's Landing knows their operation, so they can break it down and quantify it, whereas Taylor gave us like I can't remember what it was, a weekly estimate or the number, so it was different.
yeah, I didn't put that much weight on it.
Yeah.
Just,
I guess when I look, like, I would support fully funding if I looked at the other operational missions and seeing the next ones that start, like Gigi's Playhouse and Placer Veteran. You know, Gigi's Playhouse, I remember one thing, like, they do great work, and I believe they were the ones that wrote they wouldn't be impacted if they don't get fully funded, or they have had a lot of support as well. Whereas this agency, I feel, would be more impacted with the funds, but just throwing that out there.
I think I'll go ahead then and entertain a motion to fully fund the Taylor House for $10,000 of what they requested.
What do we do with Silver Wishes?
which we need to bring Commissioner Chair Gibson back in for.
Okay.
I mean, we could still make the decision on supporting the Taylor House and then
And then come back.
and then
say-
address Silver Wishes when she returns. it will impact potentially the operational mission support. But again, we still have funds.
161.
So did you make a motion?
No.
Or no, no, you would entertain a motion. for full-
Can I make a motion?
We still need public comment as well.
Oh, so we have to open it up for public comment for Taylor House before we make a motion. So we'll open it up for public comment. Seeing no public comment, we'll close public comment. Okay. Can I make a motion, or do I have to entertain one?
No, we have to
I
entertain.
have to
one.
okay, here's me entertaining a motion.
Back to entertaining.
In the interest of moving us along, and I think, we can vote either way, so let's go ahead and say move to fully fund Taylor House at the $10,000 level.
Can I second?
You are able to second technically.
Okay, I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I would wish to record I abstain, please.
Okay.
Whatever.
Okay, one abstention, and motion carries.
2 abstentions because.
2 abstentions?
Commissioner-
Oh, and
yes.
Commissioner
Oh, sure.
Gibson obviously is abstaining. Okay, motion carries.
Well, hers is more of a recusal, but still.
Right, same thing.
I would like to return to the group 2. But I know we have a recusal for number 11, Wellness Within. I don't know if we want to take 7 through.
We also still have Silver Wishes.
Silver wishes.
We do.
And small requests, and it would be, it would be, back to like what we talked about with Plaster Food Bank, it would be good to get resolution on that application before we move forward with the remainder of the funding.
So you guys wish to go back to the small requests?
We are. We're on
Oh, sorry.
small requests for Silver Wishes. We're opening it up for discussion.
And we had set this aside due to concerns about the eligibility, the use of the funds. Again, the application was quite clear what they might use it for. There was concern about the applicability of a bid, given the equipment they might purchase. So that's where the discussion was left off, if I recall correctly.
I believe, Commissioner Reed, you brought up that they did not use their funds last year as described in their application?
From what I recall, yes, they had said that they were going to get one scooter, and then in the grant, there was a linked, which was a good need for the brakes in the van, and that's where the funds went. So it was a difference in what they had described earlier.
So my opinion is that I know you have to be nimble with funds, and Van's brakes is important, but we approved this money to do a certain thing, and it didn't happen. So that would be my concern with this. If, we think it's going for equipment to serve folks that really need it, and then they end up using it for that.
And I just want to remind everyone, we did mention with this particular application this year, I think Commissioner Reed, you did mention it was a little more fluid in terms of the wording. They did do more general. And I hear your concern there as well. That is a very valid concern as well. So just to remind everybody where we are.
Did we, going back to the capital expenditures, did we have 3 bids on everything? I can't remember.
No,
That one was not.
No,
they didn't classify it as capital expenditures.
I don't think that's a reason to not fund them, because I don't think that's very clear. It would be more, but I also probably, if we went back and looked at everybody else's use of funds last year, many of them had probably moved things around, because that's just the way it goes. So, I have no problem doing a partial funding with them, but realizing it might not go for what their application says it would go for, because that was their history.
I didn't catch that part of it, so.
Do we need to open up for public comment?
If we're going to take action.
I think so.
Do we have a motion?
Or we do have
I don't know if
consensus
I'm ready
first?
to, or if we're still
Oh.
talking.
Are we,
If there's more discussion with the commissioners on it, if not, we should open for public comment.
Okay.
No?
I think we're ready to open up for public comment.
Okay, so let's open for public comment just on discussion of Silver Wishes, correct?
No public comment?
No, let's close public
Okay.
comment. And is there a motion or not on the table for this one? Doesn't have to
yet.
be.
Not yet.
Okay. So do you guys want to go back to, oh, I'm sorry. Did we want to have a
Silver
motion on
wishes.
this item and close it as Commissioner Haywood would like us to do, resolve it? Or do you want to go back to the operational mission support? May we have a tally? I feel like I'm on telephone.
We have $151,005 left.
Wow. It goes fast, doesn't it?
and I mean, and no discussion can be closure as well. Yes. So I just wanted to make sure we.
Not having a strong opinion or emotion on the table, let's go back to mission operation support.
Yeah, I like that. Okay.
Back to you,
I'm
Commissioner.
good with that, thank you.
Pass that over to me. Okay, so we are down to, where did we go?
7, Gigi's Playhouse through the next recusal.
Okay, so we're 7 down.
7 through 10, Hart's Landing.
Okay.
Because the next one we have a recusal.
11.
Okay, so let's talk about, or should we talk about 11?
We could
No,
talk about 11 if we want to and have a recusal.
I think we should talk about 7 through 10 first.
Okay,
So let's see where we are with money.
okay. Let's open up conversation for 7 through 10.
I think it would be, what I would like to do, and I think we have funds to do it, if we had 7 through 10 partially funded, I think we would still have funds to do a little more in this category and potentially go back to some of our others.
That's 6. Did we?
We did, that was
Yep.
a recusal. So
We
did
fully
that
funded that one,
We did that separately.
separately.
because that was that extra 600 that we missed.
My notes
Yeah.
are confusing me, so.
So I don't know what other commissioners feel about that.
Is it possible to get some rough math on if we partially funded everything else, what that total would
The
be?
average amount proposed?
Yeah,
through
just
16?
7 through
7 through 10, right?
10 through 10 or through 16? Renee, what
7
are you
through
asking
10,
for?
Can't
because,
talk about.
yeah, 7 through 10, because we can't talk about Bruno.
If we partially fund 7 through 10, we will have $68,591 left.
Yeah, so I feel like we're. And I suppose based on that, I don't know if some of those you want to fully fund and then just do the line further down. In particular, since no one else is talking, I was going to say, Placer Veterans Stand Down, I mean, we have generally funded them. I think that is a good group. Each year, as many of these places do ask for more, but, and then the same with the law enforcement chaplaincy. And that one almost feels, some groups funding them every year, particularly when they have other sources and then they're known in the community and have natural access to other kind of, corporations and things that would align with their interests. Whereas I feel like the chaplaincy is kind of it needs support from the city. It's not something that, they do have a fundraiser, but I don't know, to me, that's kind of one of those behind-the-scenes support needs that is very needed in the community, but isn't kind of one of those, let's rally around this charity group kind of thing. So, but when people need the services, and then the other thing that's tough about this one is we've been just talking about, serving Roseville residents. They go on calls all over. Because the bulk of the activity, shall we say, is in Roseville, the bulk of their services do support Roseville residents, but this is one where they have bleed over into other areas, as would the Veterans Stand Down, which I don't have a concern with that, and if we're really focused on ARPA, we've already given away, the $350,000 in ARPA funds that I think would have targeted.
Well, the veteran stand down, I think, was pretty clear on this money. This isn't all that they have, that they get other funding sources, but this would be what would utilize for the Roseville residents.
Yes.
And they're a great collaborative partner. There's a lot of people that collaborate with them and with services to make this event successful and affect tons of people. So I'm definitely in support of 100% funding for them.
Of the 4 of those, they have the highest average percentage. It was at 73%. And then the next one that was close was Hart's Landing at 69. Then Placer County, sorry, maybe I said that wrong. So 73% was for Placer Veterans Stand Down, and then the next one was Hart's Landing at 69%, and then the Chaplain, 67%. GG's was 62%.
And I like seeing those numbers, but it's hard because we have clear rankings too.
Exactly. Thank you for raising that. I was going to raise that as well.
They may not have been my rankings, but as they average out, trying to respect that process as well.
Gigi's has a location in Roseville,
Yes.
and it's nothing like anything else that we fund,
And they're a new one.
and it's a new one. So those are my 3 pros about that.
And I would argue Hart's Landing is similar, although they are not physically in Roseville. They do serve some Roseville residents.
And I think they said this grant would go for just the Roseville
Correct.
residents. so.
Correct.
Yeah, I think that's a great cause too. It's another one where just unfortunately the number served when you compare to like a veteran stand down or something. But it's a good cause. They're a new applicant as well. Creative opportunity to really make a difference because I know animals can reach people in ways that other people can't, especially when you're really vulnerable and have trust issues.
What would our numbers look like if we fully funded those 4 applications?
You said we'd have like 60,000 left?
No, that was partial though.
Partial funded.
I thought you said it was full.
No, partial.
Would have $28,357 left.
So that's an option too.
We could split, not to make it more complicated, we could split the difference instead of fully funding, but do kind of the difference
Well, I
between
think we
the
would go
average.
to average funding. I think that gives them a considerable
It's transparent.
amount, and it's consistent with what, we'll transition to the average amount and see how far that'll go. That allows us to stretch a
That
little
one, we
further.
have the 60,000 left if we did those groups for average.
So we can continue
Yeah,
down into more.
yeah, okay. I'm ready to make a motion. I feel like we have consensus, but we need to open it for public comment.
We're
Okay.
talking about the next 4, right? Gigi's
Yes.
Playhouse.
Yes, because we have a conflict for that.
I'd like to open it up for public comment for Gigi's Playhouse. Pass. Oh, you're not done?
No.
Okay, sorry. Continue.
I was catching my breath.
Sorry.
My comment was I'm more of a proponent for the full funding, but
I agree with you.
What was that?
Full funding.
full funding for those 1, 2, 3, 4.
Again, and to build on that, not only for need, but also ranking, we do need to honor that. And yes, it'd be great to partially fund more organizations. City Council has told us multiple times they would like to see fully fund versus, bigger funds, bigger grants, rather than little bitty ones sprinkled all over the city. So I agree with Commissioner Gibson on this, on fully funding.
Yeah. Got any feedback?
Bless you.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, particularly Gigi's Playhouse. When I was reading the application, I thought it was really well written, really cohesive, and particularly the history section. They were talking about the background of their organization. I thought that was really well said, and yeah, I'm supporting.
Are we ready to open it up for public comment? Yeah, okay. I'd like to open it up for public comment for Gigi's Playhouse, Placer Veterans Stand Down, Placer County Law Enforcement Chaplaincy, and Hart's Landing Ranch. Anybody? Seeing no public comment, I'll close it. And I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to fully fund Gigi's Playhouse, Placer Veterans Stand Down.
Michelle, just, are you still the chair?
Oh, so I can't do any motions?
Yeah.
Oh, man, even though she's leading the discussion. Okay, sorry.
Well, we
Okay.
know what you're thinking now.
Okay. And I can't because I entertained the motion.
I will make a motion to fully fund Gigi's Playhouse, Placer Veterans Stand Down, Placer County Law Enforcement Chaplaincy, and Hart's Landing Ranch. We were on the same page, so.
Do we have a second?
I, Commissioner Reed, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
And I meant to say Chair Gibson, not Michelle.
I think we're all brain fried. Okay.
Double check on the amount left.
Yes.
Well done.
$28,357.
I would like to talk about the next one that has a recusal.
Can we ask Commissioner Reed to step out of the room?
Yes, and I will recuse myself for a potential conflict of interest.
Kind of a wild alignment here, but I like fully funding Wellness Within. I feel like they're a great organization. I feel like we've not consistently funded in the past, which I don't think is an issue, but I feel like that would be nice, and it just so happens they're the amount roughly that we have left. I do think further down there are opportunities. So if we partially funded, we could reach deeper into some of these others. But I like the idea of fully funding Wellness Within. So just for discussion, just to start that off.
I agree. I think what makes this application to me different this year for this organization than perhaps past years was the emphasis on the need for support for the people around them. And that's so important, where it's, we funded them in the past for programs for the individual cancer patients. And this program is unique in that it is going to be, the monies would be used for therapies and other programs for the children, the caregivers, and we often leave those folks behind. So I think fully funding this grant would have that huge ripple effect that the caregivers aren't relying on other people and are getting the services they need and aren't getting left behind.
For this application, I don't really know much about the history, but what kind of stood out to me was the fact that they were including everyone in the family, all the people that might be affected as well, which I thought was pretty important because most of these, we do have a couple others that are focusing on cancer people who are affected by it, but not necessarily the people who are affected by that person. So, yeah, it looked really cool.
So this is the next one on the Operation Missional Support. I hate to be the hound on this, but, based on the commissioner rankings and that, I think Silver wishes we still need to probably talk about that because of the way we've skipped over that in the small requests, and to try to honor the rankings that we put together for the commissioner to remove the bias. It's something I think that should be addressed before we move forward.
Yeah, I guess for me, when we discussed it earlier, there really wasn't a consensus. I feel like they have two areas where they haven't met the grant. Well, one area that's a little gray, and then the other one where I do feel they didn't meet the grant requirements. And it's always better to err on the side of caution. You could certainly ask staff as you're going through the application. We encourage questions. I think the information's pretty clear. We did speak about it in our workshop. So in my mind, that, and they have other sources of funding as well, as many of these groups do, but I feel like honoring the people who followed the directions and put the time into the grant and did what we asked them to do.
Okay, but we still ranked them, they still came in, so all the commissioners still ranked them, they still came in this follow-up, so I think we should probably do the same thing and either decide not to fund them.
Okay.
Well, I can entertain a motion to fund them, and we can take a vote.
If we're talking about Silver Wishes, we should have a full commission.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, right.
But are we going back, I guess, is the question
Is
first.
there consensus to go back to Silver Wishes, or do we want to continue with Wellness Within Well?
Well, if you fully fund,
Silver Wishes.
wellness cancer, which is a good cause, that would basically exhaust our funds. So that's why I brought it up
Yeah,
at this
no,
point.
I hear you.
Yeah,
And I'm aware
I
of
understand. But technically, we have to have her come out not knowing. So how does that work? Because she's going to come out not knowing that that really does kind of impact the other one. So do we leave her in there for Silver Wishes? Then technically, she could possibly vote against something she has a recusal on.
Yeah, it's a good question, but at the same time, I mean, she can be aware of what would be left and draw her own conclusions without inferences being discussed in front of the full commission if you want to go back to Silver Wishes.
I think the consensus is we're going back to Silver Wishes. Do we let her out of the box?
Yeah, I think
Okay,
we need to.
let's let her out of
Don't
the box.
then also start talking about the other.
About the other. Okay, okay. Should I just keep leading the conversation on this, even though it's okay?
You have a recusal?
Is there air conditioning in the box? I want to know.
Remember, you have something in
Thing here.
Snuggling you, you're nice and cold. Oh, that's your ice pack.
So is there a motion? Hi, Commissioner Reed.
Welcome back to the party.
We're back to small requests, and we're discussing Silver Wishes.
Okay.
We feel we have not closed, some commissioners feel that we have not closed the loop, so I have asked if there is a motion on the table.
So, what I would propose to address this issue, because of the, maybe the interpretation of capital improvements as well as, and I didn't pick this up in my review as far as the funds used previously. They did have an application that did make it through the scoring criteria. I would recommend partial funding, or the recommended average amount for Silver Wishes. And that's based on those two things that I mentioned that will then just address this issue. So it would be just under $3,000.
Do we have a second?
Can I ask a
Let's open
question?
up for public comment if
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's, back to Silver Wishes.
We're-
This
we're
is your
talking.
third public comment.
We're still just,
Oh, I
we're
had
still
a question.
discussing.
Okay.
My question, how much money's left?
Sorry, I.
28 and change.
28,357.
$28,357.
Okay.
Any
That's
public
it. That was
comment?
the only question. No, that's a good question.
It is a good question. Okay, we'll open it up for, you got to do it.
We open up for public comment. No public comment. No one at the podium. We will close for public comment. Let's entertain Commissioner Chris's motion to fund Silver Wishes the average amount proposed of $29.68. Is there a second?
I, Commissioner Reed, second.
So we have a motion, Commissioner Chris, and a second from Commissioner Reed to fund the average amount proposed for Silver Wishes of $29.68. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Nays?
No.
And abstentions. Motion passes. Are we done with small requests before we ask Commissioner Reed to step out again? I'm getting nods.
Yes.
I'm content, yes.
All right. We need to go back to,
Well, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm a little slow now. It's getting late. For small requests, would you want me to step out since I don't believe you guys have voted on one yet?
say that again?
Small request for the first one, since I have to recuse myself from that one. I don't believe
We
I.
did vote.
Oh, you did already? Okay.
Yeah, we voted.
Yes, thank you.
back.
Okay, just checking.
But you get to wear out the carpet again for something else.
We're going
Going to the operational mission
back to
support.
wellness within.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. No, you're
Back in the
fine.
box.
And now we have, don't say it.
$25,389.
Okay. I'd like to open it up for discussion on the idea of funding the remaining amount on wellness within service cancer support
I was
services.
going to say the very same words. I'm fully supportive of exhausting the funds with this grant,
Any
the
dis-
remaining funds.
I support that.
Do I have to entertain a motion?
Well, first we got to open
Public
for public
comment.
comment.
Open it up for public comment. Public comment, we'll close public comment. I'll entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to use the remaining funds to fund wellness within cancer support services, improving quality of life for those impacted by cancer.
Take a second. Anybody?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Well, with one abstention, obviously.
Good job.
So is there anything else? We've covered it all and we've made all our motions, right?
Yep.
And we don't need to do anything with the ones we're not funding. I feel like in past years, we've had,
Just to make it clear for the record, it wouldn't be a bad idea to take a motion and say for the remainder of the applications, the commission,
but then do we have recusal issues with those?
are there some recusals left in that
Yes.
group?
In the non-funded, there are recusals, yes.
How many recusals do we have left in the non-funded?
3.
2? 11 and 12 in small requests, and is there another one?
6 in strategic one-time grants.
Person.
Okay. So let's let Renee take a walk.
We'll do a motion for each of the recusals if it's 2 or 3. Thank you.
a potential conflict.
So we'll do an individual motion for the ones that are recused, and then we'll do one big motion for the rest that have no recusals.
When she comes back?
Yeah.
Okay.
And is she recused on both?
Yes.
Oh, she
Okay.
is?
And that's the end of our recusals for the non-funded?
No, I've got a recusal.
Okay. We'll do that one, and then we'll do one big group for the
Enya's
rest.
got a recusal.
I have a recusal.
Okay.
So we're going to do a motion to not, to make it clear that we're not funding Keaton's Child Care Alliance, and what was the other one for her? Salvation Army?
Salvation Army.
Salvation.
No, because that's not a
Take note
recusal.
troop.
Oh, well, I'm one of those, though. I'm a
Yeah, so we
recusal for
can't,
that.
we got to, let's just finish up the category of
Okay,
strategic
all right.
one-time
No,
grants.
that's fine.
One at a time. So we're entertaining a motion not to fund the number 6.
Oh, do we need to, we probably need to open for public comment, don't we?
Technically, have the motion on the table and then open for public comment, but yeah.
Let's open for public comment. All that we are discussing at this time is Keaton's Child Cancer Alliance. Closing public comment, is there a motion on the table?
Yes, I will make a motion to close funding decisions for Keaton's Child Care Alliance, and we've decided, the commission has decided not to fund.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion not to close discussion and not to fund Keaton's Child Cancer Alliance by Commissioner Perez with a second by Commissioner Carroll. All those in favor?
Except it's Commissioner Haywood.
Haywood, sorry. What did I call you?
Perez.
Sorry,
And I
she's
love
on
the
my
way you
mind.
rephrased it, thank you.
Commissioner Haywood. Second by Carroll. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Name.
Motion carries.
And so, do you want to step out while Renee?
Yep.
Oh.
Okay, so we can, so now we can, while Renee is in the box, let's get her out of the box.
Got
or
it.
In the
Okay,
box.
that's
and then-
why I was confused.
We both have
both
to be in
have
for
the
this
same
next one,
recusal.
So I have a conflict.
Or take no troop.
Okay.
Back to small request, take note troop.
Got it. I forgot about that. I forgot it was two of them.
Then this one will handle, those are two recusals. So do we have a motion on the table? Or do we have public comment on take note troop, social emotional workshops, and field trips? Closing public comment. Do we have a motion on the table?
I will make a motion to close discussion and not fund Take Note Troops application.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Do we have a motion, Commissioner Haywood, a second from Commissioner Chris, to close discussion and not fund Take Note Troop? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm a quick learner.
Of bouncing around, but we'll get it, right?
Yeah, you're doing a great job. Thank you.
Oh, I have mine under.
So the only other recusal we have in this category is Inya, but do we want to,
Is which one?
Oakmont Parents Club, so do we want to bring these guys in and send Inya out so we can close this section?
Would you state your recusal, India?
I have a potential appearance of conflict of interest, and I'm recusing.
Thank you.
Oakmont Parents Club.
Recused item 9, I'm assuming that we're just going to be talking about 10, 11, and 13. Oh, no, 11, we're just talking about
Talking
11
about 11.
because of Oakmont's Parent Club. Do we have any public comment about the Oakmont's Parent Club? I know we have funded them in the past. Closing public comment, is there a motion for the Oakmont's Parent Club?
I will make a motion to close comments or close discussion on Oakmont Parents Club and not fund.
Second, please.
I, Commissioner Reed, second.
Okay, we have a motion to not fund and close discussion on the Oakmont Parents Club from Commissioner Haywood and a second from Commissioner Reed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Do I need to leave on number 9, or did you guys already do your thing?
Yeah, we're done with 9.
We did.
9's done?
9's done.
So to wrap up this category, we've got California Care Force and is it a Lynn W. Butler unit, American Legion? If I said that correctly?
Yeah.
Open for public comment on these two applications? Seeing no public comment, we'll close public comment. Is there a motion on the table?
I make a motion to close discussion and not fund these applications.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Perez, second.
So we have a motion to not fund and close discussion on the California Care Force and the Lynn W. Butler Unit 169 American Legion Auxiliary by Commissioner Haywood and a second by Commissioner Perez. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and that wraps up our discussion on funding for small requests. Staff, may we please have a total of what we funded for this category?
Requests?
Yes. Out of the 99,586, what did we fund?
I can't read it. $69,204.
Thank you. I believe we've got one more to close out the strategic one-time, is that correct? The Salvation Army?
Support?
I was going to
No,
finish out
just-
Salvation Army first.
Yeah, just gonna do, yeah.
So we have no recusals for this organization. Do we have any public comment? Or any more discussion? Seeing no public comment, I will close that. Do we have a motion on the table?
I make a motion to close discussion and not fund this application.
Commissioner Perez, second.
So we have a motion to close discussion and not fund the Salvation Army by Commissioner Haywood and a second by Commissioner Perez. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I'm up. All
Right.
right. Oh, where are we at here?
No recusals left.
No recusals left, and we're looking at 12 through 16, correct? Opening up for discussion, or should I just open it up for public comment? Okay. Open it up for public comment regarding Compassion Planet, Roseville Alano Club, Glasser Advanced Robotics and Technology, Hearts and Hands Counseling, and Teams for Dreams Foundation. Seeing no public comment, we'll close public comment. And I'd like to entertain a motion regarding Compassion Planet, Roseville Lano Club, Placer Robotics, Robotic and Technology, Hearts and Hands Counseling, Teams and Dreams Foundation.
I make a motion to close discussion and not fund these applications.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Chair Chris seconds. And Commissioner Haywood makes a motion, totally backwards. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Staff, may we please have a total for what we funded in this category?
The operational mission support funded $433,437.
And I forgot to ask for a total funded on the strategic one-time grants.
$102,000, $102,125.
Thank you.
Proportionate.
Pretty proportionate to what was asked for in each category. That's good job, everybody. Opening for public comment one more time. Seeing no public comment, closing for public comment. Is there any more discussion or staff reports that we need to entertain?
Toby and I will be taking these grant funding recommendations to council. We'll probably take them the second meeting in May to council, and then once they're approved, Heather will help us get the checks cut, and then we'll have our next grants commission meeting July. Does anybody have the date? It's the second Tuesday in July.
No May or June meeting.
No May or June meeting, no.
I confirm
July 11th.
When does our
May, I believe, the site visit prohibition.
yeah, May? Thank you. I'm done.
We're going to wait until council
Approves
takes
it.
action on the
Okay, that's what I wanted to
recommendations.
clarify.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to make a comment. Hopefully we have, well, for those who are still here, thank you for staying, and also for those who might be listening. Just for all the applicants, I know this is a lot of work, and if your group did not get funded, please don't take that as a sign that we don't support you, and we would encourage you to come back next year. We also have the ARPA funding, so it is a competitive process. We do try to fully fund where we can, but, there's so many good causes, and it is tough because we can't fund everything. So I just want to especially encourage those groups who didn't get funded. Don't take that to mean we don't support your organization, and we'd love to see your application come back.
How many more years of the ARPA funding? One?
And next year, the ARPA funding will be the final amount. It'll be $300,000.
But funding plus yeah.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Any other, I'm sorry, staff, when might we get a summary that's going to council?
Say that again, I apologize.
Will we receive the summary going to council before it goes?
I can send you one if you'd like.
Is that okay? Just keep my paperwork in order. And
Absolutely.
that meeting is, do you know what date that meeting is?
It should be the 18th, I believe. Let me look. It's the 17th, May 17th.
Okay. I just want to put that on my calendar to attend, just in case there's questions.
17th?
Yeah, in the past we've spoken.
Yeah.
All righty. I think if there's no more discussion, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Perez, make a motion to adjourn.
And a second?
I'll second.
Motion to adjourn by Commissioner Perez and seconded by Commissioner Haywood. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Have a good evening, everybody, and thank you for your time. Thank you for your time, video man.
Thank you.
Video man.